Hey, some of this is a sort of review before I leave for the day, because there's a lot that I process, particularly in the morning. When the energy comes up, I get to feel the sun. Thank you very much for that sun, although you got to be careful, because you can get burned real easy, and I don't run a lot of melanin, so I got to use zinc oxide on me. Anyway, a couple of things that I want to review that are real important. Okay, now obviously this is my perspective, okay, based on how I experience who I am, because an experience is represented by the value of what that experience means to us, all of us, right? So I tag an experience based on the value that it has to the entire cosmos, not just me, not just others, but the entire cosmos, everybody that is out there, because I perceive the entire cosmos, wherever there is something that is a unit of consciousness that is experiencing what it is in relationship to everything else that is communicating to each other, which is everything, simultaneously, right? So I look at the speed of the transmission. How fast is that communication going between one being and another? And what does that communication mean in terms of its value? So we value that which has the greatest value. Well, how do you know what has the greatest value? Okay, well, I don't like to experience any harm being done to anybody. Do you? Because then I'm distracted from what it is that I'm creating and thus experiencing at a very high rate of speed. So when you realize you live in a universe or a cosmos that is based on infinite experiences, then you realize that you have the ability to experience infinity. So what is infinity to me? What is infinity to you? Infinite experiences. So what kind of energy are you using to experience infinite experiences? Well, if you're experiencing everything there is to experience at a very high rate of speed, then every single one of those experiences are running at such a high rate of speed that you're not being held captive by nothing. Okay? That's like, duh. But, and it's not up for me, or anybody for that matter, to decide for you what it is you're supposed to experience. That's what free will is. Otherwise, otherwise you're held captive. The creator of the cosmos, which is what I am, which is what creation is, okay, is the energy that we're using to experience what it is we create. So that's why the very notion, when you think of second person or third person, that I'm going to give away all my energy to this other being because that other being represents my salvation or represents the creator of the universe. Well, wait a second, I'm a creator too. Okay? So I think of it as just being one unit of consciousness that is experiencing all the other units of consciousness that represent what they experience and what I experience, and we're all communicating what it is we're all experiencing, that we communicate with each other, the speed at which we're experiencing who we are. So we're essentially a representation of the energy that we're all using to communicate with each other. So the cosmos is a communications network. Yeah. Okay, so I have fun with it because it's so simple, particularly when you never lost your childhood. So I love to still play. One of the greatest and best therapies I know of, to hang out with children. Okay? Hey, I was one of you once. It's like you forget about the physical body this age when you look yourself in the mirror and I got wrinkles and all this stuff. My spirit is just as spunky, okay, as an Energizer bunny was when I was 4. Running around with a rubber hosey, okay, and a rubber ducky, okay? Anything that was available to have fun with. As Patty Broussard once said to everybody, you're supposed to be having fun down here. No shit, Sherlock. Okay? She's providing with you an unbelievable simulation experience. Okay? Going to Yosemite Park. Are you kidding me? To look how Half Dome was carved out. One of my favorite places. If you've never been there, you got to go there. Okay? It is an awesome experience. Is Tuolumne Meadows. Oh, man. Just like, wow. I could hang out here for a week. Thank you, girl, for that experience. Because that's what it is. You experience how this stuff is all carved out. I think of it as an art gallery. Thank you for your art gallery. As Patty Broussard once said, I believe it was her mother, Eve, won an award for a biosphere. Yeah, can you imagine being your own? How creative is your imagination? So that if I jump into your biosphere and I want to rate it, okay, I can rate it by how beautiful it is to experience, how creative your artistic expression is with the powerful energy that you're using to do it with. The same way I experience the girl on the planet, what she does with her energy. Okay? Now, in my particular case, I love the redwoods. I have little report cards that I put down in memory, right? And the redwoods are magical. It's like, wow. You know, just like I think it was in one of the Star Wars episodes, the last one, the third one, when they beat the crap out of the Dark Alliance, right? And they were filming that scene where all these little, they look like jet skis, zooming through space in between the trees. Those were redwoods. Those are old trees. Love to be around them babies. They're living, okay? They're conscious. They're aware of you, you're aware of them. You know, that's a magical place. All the green ferns. It's like, wow, who thought of this? You're experiencing what that is. See, so you have a relationship between it and you. What kind of relationship do you have with it? It's beautiful. It's powerful. You don't ever want to leave it. It's like being in a timeless state. So when you're always in a timeless state, you begin to realize the speed at which you're experiencing who you are, but you're not even aware of it. And that's what it means to not live in the past and not live in the future. You're just experiencing how beautiful it is to experience who you are, which is the energy that you're using to experience that event. And that event is on a timeline, even though I don't think of any time, right? There isn't any time. There's only energy. So what you're experiencing is the speed through which you're experiencing what you're experiencing, what it is you're experiencing within you in a bidirectional mirror or echo chamber on a visible light spectrum. But you obviously can close your eyes and I still have moving images. And that becomes the creative imagination from which we write the books, that those stories are written, and thus when somebody reads it, their state of consciousness is experiencing what is in the consciousness of the being who wrote the book that you're now in. You're experiencing it. You're experiencing the story, which is the energy that was used to write it with, the same way that we all write stories that way. So we're storytellers, of course. We're telling stories of our experiences, what we experience. So I wanted to just very shortly give a review on something called programmable matter. And I think because I get a lot of questions, I used to more on Facebook, even though I shut that thing down. Facebook is useless. Now, I realize that there are people who say, well, wait a second, this is how we all communicate with each other and trying to wake each other up. There is that aspect to it, naturally, of course, okay? I mean useless. Define your terms. Give it context. It's useless in the sense that it doesn't want to run certain bits and bytes of data, okay? And why is that? Because the data that is represented by what it perceives, okay, as being, according to the standard of the energy or the bits and bytes of the data of what you want to put up, is unacceptable. Because that will expand their consciousness. And they will begin to realize everything that is out there that is possible to experience, which is infinity, and we can't allow that. We have to contain the state of consciousness from which people experience through this technology. So you're experiencing the technology that is preventing you, us, from fully expressing ourselves. That's a violation of free will. Okay? Particularly when you're doing no harm. All it is data. All it is information. What you choose to do with that information, not up to me. It's up to anybody that is experiencing the information that I'm presenting, which is represented by the energy that I'm experiencing right now, who is passing on that data, that information, that experience, that waveform of communication. So I remember, because I get questions about where can I go to find resources to get more information on this kind of stuff. It would take me forever to be able to repeat what was held in memory at one time that I was experiencing all the data in thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of journal articles that are in just a whole slew of scientific journals. And that doesn't even include everything that is communicated to me by big, powerful spirits. Okay? The amount of data that represents would take me forever to express it. So how do you transfer that much data into somebody else's data processor? We don't have the time to do that. So I thought, okay, you want to speed up your learning curve, which is speed up the wave from which your consciousness is going to expand, because now you're learning through others that hold an enormous amount of data that represents the underlying causality. Okay? Number one is Patty Broussard. She's the commander of the Earth Defense Forces. She filled in an enormous amount of blanks. Open up a whole bigger library. Oh, yeah. No kidding. Thank you very much for the information, Patty. Okay? Same thing with Karen Ann Luke McDonald. She's AB positive bloodline, okay? Which means she's not a hybrid. She's not an alien. Okay? She's a clan mother. Okay? So she knows what's what. She knows what the law is on this planet. I paid close attention to everything she was doing, and I love her for everything she's doing. Okay? So Karen Ann Luke McDonald, those 58 videos, there may be more than that, but that's the number I remember. Okay? Of alkalizing your body. Okay? She has an enormous amount of information on how to keep your frequencies up, including a technology app that can essentially take a voice print and find out areas within all the data that you're running off of that doesn't serve you, okay? And so therefore, it can be tweaked, which means we're correcting, okay, data. That's what it is. You're experiencing the data. So if the data is preventing you from liberating all your circuits so that you're running a high-speed communication platform, she will help you do that. And she uses the technology, plus she provides for you all the other higher nutritional elements that you can get, the places you can get them, and some of the stuff is very simple. It doesn't cost hardly anything to be able to do it. Like getting your pH up, which is raising the energy or the vibration from which you're experiencing who you are, so that all your cells, which are communicators, are happy and joyful because they're running on a lot of electrical current, and you get a chance to experience a lot more light, particularly when you're living through your heart. That's the most important thing that I know. That's your greatest protection. That's the biggest vortex. Once you got your heart up and running, now you're spinning an enormous amount of data, which means you're aware of a lot more things. And now you're running a powerful magnetic shield. Okay? That means you're climbing. Okay? You're moving up in speed. And that allows you to essentially, when you're running a higher state of awareness, then that prevents you from your state of awareness being held captive to lower awareness or lower consciousness. Things that you're aware of. Okay? When you're running on default, which is what I call autopilot, self-correction, when you're running with the most powerful vortex, which is through your heart, you're a light worker. That's what it is. Because you're transmitting everywhere that you go high-frequency energy. You're filling batteries up like crazy. I've experienced that. As I mentioned in a previous video, you're an automatic energy service provider. That's right. It means you learn how to attract more light, go faster, and now you're broadcasting higher frequency energy everywhere you go. That's the purpose of this classroom. Okay? So when you get into programmable matter, here's an example of programmable matter. When you look at a pigeon, for example, there's pigeons around here every morning. What are they doing? They're waiting for you to give them something. I call them scroungers. But I give them love every day. But I got to be careful and remember, listen, they've been reprogrammed. Go back and look at the original data that was used as a set of instructions upon which they use that information to be aware of who they are and how it is they acquire energy so they can maintain what it is they're aware of, which is themselves, which is a physical holographic projection in which they're projecting to others what it is you see on the visible light spectrum, a pigeon. So when you're feeding a pigeon all the time, now all of a sudden it realizes, hey, I'm being reprogrammed. Now I got to come to you in order to get energy versus the way in which it originally knew how to get energy, which is what the original data set was. So you reprogram the pigeon. How many different species have been reprogrammed? That doesn't even get into all the hybrid stuff. Because they hybridize humans as well. For what purpose? Become dependent. Instead of being a powerful energy service provider on which they ascend in a classroom based on a time clock that's in that DNA, so you can go to higher density, which means your consciousness is expanding and you're moving at a higher rate of speed. That's called lift. Anti-gravity, right? So now you're able to experience more things, a more powerful cosmos. Because now the energy that you're using to sustain who you are, you realize you're never going to run out of energy. Because you're the energy service provider for your own energy, and now you're giving it away at an enormous rate of speed, same way that a sun does. That's the purpose of a classroom. So when you're reprogramming something, then you're making it dependent on energy rather than being an independent energy service provider. So now you get into the different evolution of species and why they behave the way that they do in acquiring energy every day rather than being an energy provider, right? They're a consumer. So now you get into biology between consumers and producers. There's got to be some peace and harmony and balance within the energy field in which those relationships take place. So now we're including every species on the planet. And not just birds and aquatic life and fauna, but everything that is consciousness that is here. And the relationships that we all have here represented by the sum of its parts that are aware of each other. Which way are we headed? You know, which direction is humanity going in? Well, not everybody's running the same frequency. That's what separation of the herd means, see? So that's why when I get sort of criticized sometimes by other light workers, other spiritual guides, if you will, that say, Robert, you're wasting way too much of your time on these people. They're gone. I only work with the able. Well, what do they mean by the able? They have an open mind. You know, they're receptive to new information, which means they still have the ability and the desire to learn. When did they stop learning? Because they're running a program, and that's the one that they run, and they don't want to change the program that they're on because they're comfortable with the one that they're running. And that is precisely, if you read the book called Brave New World, that Aldous Huxley talked about. I remember, I was around back then. I wasn't at the actual presentation, but I remember Aldous Huxley. I remember a lot of stuff because he was on the news at that time discussing how Americans will be happy in their slavery. They will obey. And you see it all around you. They obey the master. I tell you something to do, you do it. You jump through that hoop. And why do they do it? Fear. Okay? Well, guess what? Fear didn't create the cosmos. But they don't know the difference between what that is and who they are. So they obey the master. What happened to their original identity? Didn't they ever experience any love? Ever? To remember what love is? So that's what we do. We do soul work, trying to restore the light, which is open the heart, to get the speed up and realize, hey, my mind isn't being held captive to fear anymore. Fuck the master. That's a parasite. That's right, that's a parasite. That's something else that's trying to hold our imagination captive, strip it right out of us. So now we're running on intelligence. Yeah, artificial intelligence. Okay? In order to do what? Perform a function. It defines for us what our function is. Okay? That's control. Now you're being controlled by artificial intelligence. That's what it means to be a machine. Reprogramming a human to become a machine. Running on a different set of data. Okay? Now that data is what you run off of. That's why they mined all of our data. It was mining all of the data out of us. So it could learn who we are. And then it compiles all that data. And then what it decides to do is now it's going to give you data. And then you run off that data. Now you're running off the data that is giving you. So now you don't know the difference between what you are and what it is. You're the same. And that's called assimilation, by the way. In Star Trek, the Borg episodes do a pretty decent job of explaining sort of how assimilation works. Okay? So that's why as a child, for example, I knew what the hell I was. Okay? And that's why you know intuitively, future proves past. Okay? That's why everything over the last 60 years that I've experienced on a timeline was already being experienced in what I knew when I was 6 years old. Because you're experiencing all of the data that represents the sum of its parts that is experiencing all that data, and that's called a data exchange. That's information processing. So that's why the light had to come in here. Okay? Because this is an existential threat. Not just here. Okay? Because it wants to control everything. Assimilate everything. It doesn't have an off switch. So what do you do with that? That's the question that humanity has to ask itself. Go look in the mirror. So there's two great sources that I know to sort of speed up how that works. One is Patty Broussard, talks about black goo, okay? And Harold Kotzvela, who does one of the best jobs of breaking it all down. He'll even show you black goo. He has an episode, which is one that he gave, as I remember it, that he won an award for in Prague, Czechoslovakia. He breaks it all down. Okay? When you understand how being programmed or matter program, or what I call matter density consciousness programming works, then you can begin to understand how you can counter it by raising your state of consciousness. And living through your heart is one of the most powerful ways to do that, which is why, as he described it from the experience he had touching black goo, that it shut his heart down. Okay, which essentially means his power plant was being shut down into lower frequency, lower density consciousness. And that's what it's trying to do. Therefore, now you're captured, a captured unit. Your consciousness has been captured. Now you're experiencing what it is rather than what you were before that happened. That's the nature of black goo. The makers of the black goo are the archons. Anyway, I'll leave you that for the day to think about. Have a good day. I love you all. The sun is out. It's a beautiful day. Bye.